Poker Night in the Inventory. What an incredibly fun idea for a crossover. Just having 4 characters completely unrelated to each other coming together and just casually talking it up over a game of poker. It really allows the interaction between them to be the main focus. Probably more so than any other crossover out there, since there's nothing really to distract them from it. It's kind of crazy to me that Telltale didn't make more of these games when they were still around. It didn't take that long to make. The first one was made in 50 days. Granted, the game was very broken because of it, but even then, if you doubled that time, that would still only be a little over 3 months. I guess they just wanted to focus all their time on other stuff like Minecraft Story Mode and Batman and bankruptcy.
The company went bankrupt with extreme prejudice.
But even beyond Telltale, why did no other company try doing this idea? Sure, it'd be a carbon copy, but fuck it, Telltale died, might as well loot the grave, which is what I guess Skunk Ape did because they re-released a remaster of the first game on modern platforms. But now that we have this remaster, pretty naturally my mind started thinking about the future of this franchise, most specifically a third entry. Now I don't know if we're actually gonna get another new Poker Night game anytime soon. Skunk Ape has only done remasters, and it seems that they'll be sticking with it for a while. If I had to take a guess, I think their next game might be remastering Strong Bad's cool game for attractive people, since, Strong Bad is in Poker Night, meaning that Skunk Ape needed to get the rights for the character anyway, and they got a nice new clean model for him here. Apparently Skunk Ape is in the special thanks of that new Homestar game that came out in 2023 that I only learned about just now while doing research. It might even be possible that they reached out for remastering that game first, and figured they might as well get the rights for the other two to remake Poker Night, and then this one just happened to come out before it, since, well, it's an incredibly easy game to remaster. But even if Poker Night 3 is nowhere in sight, it'd still be fun to think about my ideal roster for what a third Poker Night would bring. Predicting or even wishlisting something like that is pretty difficult. This idea is basically as broad as it can possibly be. Everything's on the table: movie, games, shows, comics, and so on. That's a lot of characters to pick from. How do you just dwindle that down to 4? For that reason, I decided to think of 3 separate rosters for this, since, the idea allows for endless possibilities like that, with interesting character combinations that can bring up unique conversations and discussions that I'd love to see. So might as well do multiple. So to start us off, I'm just gonna go ahead and blurt out my roster idea, and then explain myself, as I find that easier than trying to explain them one at a time. So for the first roster I have here, it's Phone Bone, Captain from the Tankman series, Anakin Skywalker from Star Wars, and finally Reagan from Mob Psycho, with the narrator from the Stanley Parable as the dealer. For this roster, my main focus was honestly just try to make the assortment of characters as varied as possible. First things first, I tried to make sure everyone had a very distinct, different personality, while also having unique traits that can be really brought out when interacting with one another. For example, Anakin's whole story is about how he fell to the dark side from being tricked and manipulated by Palpatine. So I think it would be pretty funny if that got translated to him being more susceptible to being scammed by Reagan. Like every once in a while, Reagan tries to get Anakin to buy into some of his bullshit, and Anakin almost always falling for it before Tankman or Phone intervenes. You can sort of give Tankman and Phone Bone a little bit of a rivalry with one another. Their personalities would clash quite hard, and I get the feeling they wouldn't like each other very much. Everyone at the table probably wouldn't really like Tankman very much, but these two would have it the most extreme. I think having a character on the roster that everyone just sort of dislikes can make for some of the funniest jokes in Poker Night. Phone Bone would be sort of the straight man of the table, while still being able to have his own interesting conversations due to the many odd adventures he's been on. I also picked him because I wanted a character who had history with Telltale. The Bone games were some of the first games Telltale has ever made, so I thought it fit pretty well. Although, now I think about it, how old is Phone? I don't really have any rules set for about who can and can't get in, but this is a bar, and I feel like you definitely can't have a kid here. I looked it up, and Phone doesn't seem to have any confirmed age, so good enough for me. Finally, we have the narrator from the Stanley Parable. I just think he fits perfectly into the role of the dealer. In the original game, he's always commenting on the actions of the player, making fun of them and going out of his way to upset them when they don't do what he wants. This just seems so perfect for this kind of game, making fun of the players as they lose. It would also be pretty interesting to see him make any kind of conversation. The narrator is really only ever talking to himself, so to have it where he's actually having conversations with people and them being able to talk back at him and call him out would be very interesting to see how he would respond to that. I also wanted to make a mixture of smaller IPs with bigger ones. The first game had characters from more niche properties like Tycho from Penny Arcade, or Strong Bad from the Homestarrunner series. The biggest name there was Heavy, who's from a popular shooter game. Meanwhile, the sequel had much bigger properties as a part of it. Brock Samson from the Venture Brothers, Ash Williams from the Evil Dead series, Claptrap from Borderlands. So for the third game, I wanted more of a mixture. A character like Captain from a small internet web series interacting with Anakin Skywalker from Star Wars, the biggest movie series ever, would just be so surreal. Reagan isn't the biggest name in the world, but he is a pretty popular anime character, and Bone's in the same boat. Not the biggest name, but still generally well known. That's just another part of Poker Night that makes it feel special. Characters have no business interacting, actually having a chance to talk to one another, which is why I really want to see a mix of big and small IPs, since there'd be literally no other kind of property that would allow for such direct interactions between two characters like that. I admit though, getting Anakin for a game like this by a studio like Skunk Ape is probably a massive pipe dream. That would be like the biggest IP this series has ever had, and this is not Telltale. It's a much smaller team. Sure, it's got members from Telltale, which might help with certain relations, but Star Wars? Who knows? Maybe if they actually do manage to make that Tales of Monkey Island remake or remaster, that might give them a good working relationship with Disney and make it that much more possible. Alright, let's see here. Time for the second roster. The first one, I just went completely balls to the wall with it. Any random assortment of characters I could think of that would work well together. For this one, while still wanting it to be varied, I decided to make more of a connecting theme between them, which might give their conversations a little more something to revolve around, where the characters can sort of relate to one another. So for this roster, I picked out Monica from Doki Doki Literature Club, Ted from the Ted movies, Pomni from the Amazing Digital Circus, and Gwenpool from Gwenpool, with the dealer being Am from I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream. The theme I picked for this one was the idea of being real. Each character has something about them where being real is a question. Monica's whole thing is that she's a self-aware character trapped in a dating sim. Gwenpool was someone who was in the real world who found themselves in the comics and is fully aware of that fact. Pomni is someone who's trapped in a digital world, and depending on how episode 9 goes, may or may not be a digital copy of someone. And Am is an AI who hates humanity due to his inability to be experienced what they experience, and also them just being huge tools. Ted is admittedly a bit of a stretch, but I wanted a character who stands most differently from everyone else while still vaguely fitting the theme. He's a teddy bear that was wished alive, so there could be conversations where that could relate to the others, more self-aware plights on what it means to be real. I also wanted a character that sort of fits the role of being a jackass that goes against the others constantly, and they go against him. Am too fills that antagonistic role, but I feel like someone at the table needs to do that too. It just makes the dynamics more interesting. That's actually a reason why I picked Am. Initially I had Monokuma as the dealer. He too also would have fit that antagonistic role, has some experience with digital worlds and versions of characters and such, and he and Ted have crossed over before. There was a Danganronpa ad to advertise the Ted movies, so I thought it would be a fun dynamic where Monokuma was a big fan of Ted and constantly just weirding him out with a sort of like parasocial attitude. But ultimately, I decided to go with Am, since he fills the first two roles better in my opinion, and his hatred and antagonistic nature would be far more extreme, which is kind of needed here since the personality of the characters aren't as drastic compared to the other roster. Like Monica, Pomni, and Gwenpool, while not exactly the same, they're more similar to one another than a roster like Tankman, Phone, Anakin, and Reagan. It's less their personalities that differentiate them and more their opinions about their own circumstances that set them apart. Gwenpool loves being in the Marvel comics. It's like a dream come true for them, while Monica wishes nothing more than to be a real person. And Pomni is kind of in the middle, where she has to reluctantly accept her scenario since she doesn't have much of a choice. Granted, this might create a new problem where conversations ultimately are funneled into being about this one thing and not have a lot of variety. When all the characters have similar experiences, it might make the conversations feel a little redundant. But you know, these guys still have their own personalities and interests outside of the fourth wall and being digital and fake. Monica's love for literature, Pomni's exploration, Gwen's love for just Marvel in general, and Ted's love for smoking and sex, and Am's hatred for humanity. And there's still more to draw from, so if the writers are careful, they can avoid that issue. And I think with Ted, he can still be a more wild card character, saying some out-of-pocket stuff that catches the others off guard. This is definitely a more low-key cast of characters, but I think it would still bring a lot of fun interactions. Now, there is one kind of small issue that I didn't consider until after I wrote all this out and voiced it and everything. Two of the characters here are under the age of 21. they're not allowed to drink. In the second game, there's a mechanic where you could spend money to buy the people at the table beers, which would make them more likely to give their tells, so it's easier to read them and know what kind of cards they have. I'd imagine that mechanic would be brought over into a third game. So we now run into the issue where we have two characters, 19 and 18 respectively, drinking beer. At first I thought like, okay, well, I mean, most of the world the drinking age is 18, so it's not like the game has to be set place in America, before very quickly realizing that I'm a fucking dumbass because the first game very explicitly states that the whole reason the inventory was made was because they got a whiff of a draft of the 18th Amendment, which would mean that yes, this definitively takes place in America, which means the drinking age is 21. Then the second thing I thought, like, okay, well then just throw caution to the wind and make them drink anyway. It's a video game, it's already gonna be rated M for mature, so it's not like it's that big of a deal, right? If the Tiny Toons can have an episode where all the kids get drunk and then die in a car crash, then Poker Night in the Inventory can fucking do it too. But there's still a problem with that. It's not Skunk Ape's decision on whether or not these guys can drink. It would be their IP holders. Would Marvel and Disney be okay with their 19-year-old character drinking beer? Would Dan be okay with his 18-year-old high school students drinking beer? I mean, maybe, but that'd still be a massive hurdle you'd have to get through, wouldn't it? I don't actually have a solution to this problem. It's just something I didn't consider until after recording it all. And I'm not going to just completely scrap it because of this, but I also figured it's probably something I should mention. Okay. For the final roster, I think I'm going to be a little self-indulgent here and go for personal wants. Just characters that I like. That's technically been the case already. I'm not picking characters I don't like, but these next ones are being selected purely because I like them and not much thought put into anything else. Like, I'm still going to try to keep variety and personalities in mind, but for the most part, I just like these guys. So for this one, I'm going with Phoenix Wright from Ace Attorney, Scratch from The Ghost and Molly McGee, King Arthur from Monty Python and the Holy Grail, and Thomas from Maze Runner. From the book specifically, not the movie. Fuck the movie.
Oh, you stink!
Phoenix Wright is an obvious pick if you even know my channel a little bit. I love Ace Attorney, and in that series, Phoenix is a good poker player. Gone 7 years undefeated, so I think he'd be a great fit. The Ghost and Molly McGee, I think, is just a very underrated show. I love all the characters in it, and I think Scratch would do a pretty good job filling a more aggressive role, making fun of the other characters pretty consistently. He also has a great voice. He's acted by Dana Snyder, who voices characters like Gazpacho from Chowder and Master Shake from Aqua Team Hunger Force. Master Shake probably would make a better pick at the table, but this is my personal want roster, and believe it or not, I haven't actually seen Aqua Team Hunger Force aside from a couple episodes. I really should change that. For King Arthur, he's from like a very, very silly comedy movie. A very exaggerated character. He'd definitely be the one that probably stands out the most at the table, because characters like Phoenix and Thomas are all things considered pretty down to earth. And while Scratch is a cartoon ghost, he's ironically not as cartoony as I'd say something like King Arthur from Mighty Python and the Holy Grail, which likes to just go completely off the wall with some of its humor and characters and stuff like that. So I think he'd really stand out in that way and just bring a lot of just great jokes. And finally, there's Thomas. I just like the Maze Runner books. When I was a kid, I had a hard time reading and getting into them. I always sucked at book reports because I just couldn't find the motivation to read. I couldn't get into any of the stories. And then one day for the book reports, I picked out Maze Runner on a whim, just thinking it was going to be like any other book. But then I really started to get into it. I read the whole thing in just a few days. I would actually sit down and read it because I wanted to. That never happened before. It would also just be kind of interesting to get a character from a book. I know that comes with a major hurdle of needing to get the character a whole new design, which is probably why they haven't done it, but I know there's the movie. They could just use the design there, but like I said, I don't like the movie. I don't like it at all. Please, get it away from me. And, that's all I really have to say about these rosters. There's probably plenty more I can think up. Like I said, this whole idea is just like endless possibilities. It's very interesting just going on the internet and seeing what hodgepodge of characters everyone likes to put together to see what they want to see in Poker Night at the Inventory. I've seen countless of these images like this. That's just like, it's just so fun to look at everybody's ideas of the kind of characters they want to see interacting. And I really do hope that one day we get Poker Night at the Inventory 3. Maybe not soon, but I'd still like for it to happen one day at least.